Hey y'all, welcome to the Business of Gaming podcast. I'm Josh from Gaming Haven Guild, and today we're at PAX West with David, the founder and chief librarian of the Alexandria RPG Library, a nonprofit focused on sharing RPG history and gameplay at large conventions and community-focused events. David, can you tell us about the history of the library?
So, history of Alexandria RPG. We started at Emerald City Comic Con in 2017. I was the deputy manager of gaming, and one of the other gentlemen that works with the library, he was the manager of gaming. And I had offhand said about 2-3 months before the event, we always have these board game library. Why has nobody done a role-playing game library? And then about 2 weeks before the show, an entire room of small vendors dropped out, some moved to another part of the show. And then we ended up with a room that we didn't have anything for less than 2 weeks before the show. And he goes, "Hey, can you do that role-playing game library you said you could do?" In my brain, I'm going, that's not what I said. But I was like, yeah, sure. So that night I talked to a friend who lives in Iowa, and I said, I'm going to be doing this role-playing game library. I'm just going to be pulling all the books off my shelf. I don't know what to do. And then he was like, can I mail you some books? Sure. So his books got to my house the first day. I was already up here in Seattle, away from my house. Didn't know that they got there. I had 348 books out of my house that I just stuffed on a shelf and said, role-playing games are cool. Let's talk about them. And then that night got his books. They came in the day, so we got shelved the next day. So we were like over 400 books now. This is awesome. And everybody kept coming and like, hey, can you bring this to our event? So we had like small events that were locally that wanted us to come because they were like, nobody's done this before. And then there were two little fun things that happened. One, there was a young man that came in. He came running in. He had 3 friends. He had them by their hands, running in. They were like stumbling behind him. And he just exuberantly goes, explain role-playing games. I was like, okay. Then so I started explaining what role-playing games are, and a young lady that was with him was like, so we can make characters? I was like, yeah. So I grabbed a game called Deadlands, and I thought it was gonna be fun because it's very interactive character building. It's done with a deck of cards. And they just sat there quietly for like 2 hours, these 4 teenagers making characters. And they put the books back and left. I was like, oh, they looked like they had fun. Mission success. Next day, one of the other teenagers, he came back and he's like, hey, the game that we made characters for yesterday, we went and found the books last night and we bought them and we're going to be playing that game. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So, the kid that was excited, he just found out about role-playing games. He had gone back east for a wedding in the family, and like his cousin's like, hey, let's play a role-playing D&D. And then all he could remember was it was a role-playing game and couldn't remember anything else. And now, because of that, cousin introduced him to it, and then he drug his friends in, and through the library, we introduced him to role-playing games again, more of them, and then now they went out and played, and I was like, that was really awesome. And then, I think it was on the Saturday of that event, there was a dad who had his 13-year-old son, and it was like 6 or 7 friends of his son. So Emerald City Comic Con is pretty big. It's about as big as PAX. So, on the weekend, you're at like 90,000 people that come through. So at any point, there's tens of thousands of people in the building. And here's a dad dragging 6 or 7 13-year-old kids around this giant convention. And I think he just saw, like the little sign we had said role-playing game library and a shelf of books. And he was like, great, this is a break. They come in, they're asking a million questions. Someone's like, can we play? And before I could say no, my volunteers are like, look, we know where you're going to be. If we need you, you'll be right here. Let these kids play role-playing games. So I grabbed all the D6 Star Wars books because everybody knows Star Wars. All you need are 6-sided dice, and then there's characters already made in the back of the book. So one kid would took picture of the character sheet, so he just had it on his phone to use, and we could pass the books around. The other kids were writing them down. And an hour later, none of them survived. We started in a cantina because every RPG starts in a bar or a tavern or a cantina. So they didn't even make it out of the cantina. All the characters had died. And I'm like, oh man, this is horrible. And then I get hugs from these kids. They were like, that was awesome. They give me a hug. And then, they were out in the hall like, oh my God, just see when I did this. And they were just like going over the top. They were doing what we all do, playing role-playing games, telling stories, retelling the stories that we just created together. And then I looked at the dad and legit had like a tear in his eye. I was like, hey, is everything okay? He's like, been trying to figure out for a couple of years how to introduce my son to role-playing games, and you just did that for me. I was like, oh, now I really have to actually make this thing go. And so we started going to events that first year, that was 2017, started Emerald City. And I think we did like 8 events that year, just kind of like, and it was me just dragging books to places. We did PAX that year and it was bonkers, just like, okay, here I am setting up by then I had like 1,100 books. So going from March of 2017 to September of 2017, went from 348 books to like 1,100 books in just that short amount of time. And, I'm like, okay, I have a room here at PAX. Like, what? And then, we just keep growing from there. We're over 10,000 books now. And we're in the process of making plans of how to set up a second location in the Midwest so we can get to East Coast and Midwest stuff, because trying to get to that stuff from here in Seattle is just insanely expensive.
Let's talk a little bit about the logistics of that growth, because 10,000 books, 10,000 anything is difficult to move around.
So yeah, it was absorbing my living room and dining room, literally. I was stacking stuff on the cheap foldable plastic tables, and I broke a few because they're like, oh, it's over. I'd come home and all the books are just in this V, and they're like, oh God, I got to do better. And so buying shelves when I could afford them. And then we're like, I got to do storage. So then we got a 10 by 10. And now we've got 2 10 by 10s that are stuffed full. And we're looking at either getting a 10 by 30 in climate controlled storage, or we're trying to see if we can partner with another nonprofit that they've outgrown their space, but they can't afford to go to a bigger space. So if we can work out a deal with them to go to a bigger space, and then, we're helping each other out. But it's, it's always, we're in a constant need of funds, because that was kind of the purpose of going nonprofit is, I had a friend's like, oh, you were stupid for going nonprofit. I was like, the paperwork's not horribly hard. We're a library, so we were able to put it down in that. And that went fairly quickly. But, other people, they're like, oh, talking to some gentlemen that are trying to do similar to what we're doing, but with TCGs, trading card games and collectible card games. And they're going through a much more difficult process than we did, because, it's like, we literally have books. We're a library. We go places and share books with people. So our paperwork on that, it was pretty simple. And with that, it's easier to solicit donations. I had somebody donate like 50 limited edition role-playing game books, and he would, I think we figured out the value. It was like $1,800 in those books. And so I wrote him a tax letter with the names of the books and, thank you. And then he was able, he went and got the values, and then his accountant figured it in. So he got a tax write-off doing that. And that's kind of the entire reason to do the nonprofit for us, because we've never made money. In fact, for many years, we were out of pocket $10,000+ a year. So myself and other people, putting our own funds in it to make it go. And, people are like, oh, when does this, go from a passion project to, an actual thing? I'm like, it's always been an actual thing. It's just us figuring out how to get to the people and get more than just books. I tell everybody we operate off of 3 types of donations: time, books, and money. Doing good on books. Yeah, and as we expand, many of the companies that have been donating books to us, new books, understand that now as we're expanding, instead of, hey, here's a copy of our new book, they're going to have to do a couple copies, because, we're going to be in multiple places. And they're excited about that. Getting volunteers, that's been a long road, but why we can expand to a new location is we have a really great set of people that volunteer to come and do these events with us. So like for PAX West, PAX gave us a 50 by 50 booth space with 15 tables, and then gave us, I think we had 50 badges. And so we had people that come in and volunteered as librarians. So they reshelve books, they talk to people about role-playing games, and then we have our GMs, or we call them game hosts, because we have a variety of games. And so our game hosts will sit down, they're running a huge variety of games. Sometimes D&D, but big one this weekend has been Daggerheart. What's it? Dread. Dread is super popular. We usually have that one run in the evenings, because it's supposed to be a little more, horror, suspenseful. That's not really one you run, like 10 o'clock in the morning, show open, let's play Dread. We have a lot of Star Wars. There's a ton of like classic games and super fun. So those are all those fun little logistics pieces, and getting the volunteers and getting the books donated. We've been good on that. And, we always struggle on that money piece. Some of the events pay us to come. It's not a lot of money, but they see the value that we add. Because they're like, oh, hey, we give them this space. We give them a few bucks to make sure that they can get here, get parking. Sometimes events will give us hotel rooms and stuff. So we have GMs that are coming from out of town. We can put them up, in that room. And that helps out because we're not paying for that out of pocket. Man, there's just so many just like little pieces that you never thought you would be dealing with. And I mean, the first 2 years was just me going places like, hey, I have 1,500 pounds of books. I'm going to put these shelves up and I'm going to set them up. And then I'm going to run a couple games. Then I'm going to get the attendees to run games. And we still do that to this day. But like here, we had 170 pre-planned games going off before show opened. So volunteers coming in, running those games, and then we still have tables that set aside. Oh, do you want to run a game? Great. You saw this cool game Vason from Free League. Here you go. Here's the books. Here's pencils, paper, dice, and then we help find them players. And then they sit down and play the game, and they're all like, "Yay, we played a game!" And then it's value added for the events, because not only is it our hosts running games, then they have attendees running games. So everybody's walking away with that cool extra special memory, like, oh, I played this role-playing game I never played before. And we did this, and then they'll start into the role-playing game stories, because it's what we all do when we play role-playing games.
Why the emphasis on role-playing games?
Role-playing games are awesome for a bazillion reasons. And the gaming industry, so whenever I message on social media or whatever, I always capitalize game, because it doesn't matter who you are when you come into the library. What you sit down and you're going to be gaming, you're hopefully another friendly face. But in this day and age, everybody, they're just angry people behind their thumbs on a phone. You don't know what the other person's is, or why they said what they did. But if you can sit down and game with somebody, you're going to leave that table a better person, because you've spent time with somebody you know nothing about. You could be a Republican sitting down with a Democrat. You could be, a communist sitting down with whatever you are, and you're going to sit down and game with someone you know nothing about, and you're going to have a good time. And that's somebody that you might have been angry at because of, how they posted something on social media, and you're like, oh, you're a horrible, evil person. And then you don't know any of that. You sit down and, oh man, that guy was great. Like, I really, she had some cool ideas that got us through a sticky spot in this adventure. And we used to be like that, we've always been, people angry at other people, but sitting around telling stories around a campfire, we've been doing that as humans for hundreds of thousands of years. We're just doing that with rules and somebody to direct us. Your game host, your GM, whatever you want to call them. They're just directing the story, and everybody is sitting at that table is building us up. And just sit down and go out and game with people and just be a better person. That's what role-playing games can do for us.
Well, can you walk us back through kind of the basics of setting up a nonprofit? How's that different than running for-profit business?
Well, for us, there is no way that we could do what we do for profit, just because, how do we do that? So our options were to exist as a non-entity and just trust that organizations would give us space. As a nonprofit, it gives an avenue for the books and time donations. So like if somebody's working for like Google or Microsoft and they volunteer hours for us, they actually can register those, and we get paid for their hours, which is super cool. So they come to an event, run a 4-hour game, we get paid, depending on the organization, we get paid for that 4 hours, which is nice. It's a win-win for, us. But yeah, there's no way we could do this as a for-profit thing, because we just like, everybody's like, oh, are these books for sale? And it's like, no, they're not. Please, we put signs around like, this is a library. None of these books are for sale. Because if we were doing it for sale, I don't think we'd get the support. Setting up as a nonprofit, I went through an attorney who sat me down and was like, okay, here's what we need to do. And anytime you're doing anything legal paperwork wise, you spend a few bucks to get an attorney. Find one that I found somebody that that specialized in nonprofits. So, and he's looking through, he's like, oh, well, you're a library, so this is easy. We can do, and he ended up actually giving us his time for free because he's a role-playing nerd. He was like, I really like what you're doing. This is a neat idea. So kind of lucked out on that one. But, he sat down, like, how do we classify you? And seeing that we have books and we, loan books out and talk to people about books, it was easy to sign us up as like we're education library is like, I think of it, how the subset goes.
Nonprofit or for-profit, it's still a business.
We don't sell anything. And so therefore all the money we take in are donations. So we have little bits and pieces out and we do it. We jokingly call it the PBS model. So if somebody donates $5, they can get a sticker. You donate $15, you can get a cool pin. We started a cool little thing. We, in our board member group, we're like, what about an adopt a die? It's like Pet Rock. So we got these little boxes, put paper in them, companies that had donated dice to us. We put those in the different boxes, and then we came up with little back names and backstories for all the dice. So just like the Humane Society, here's Alfie. He's adorable little kitty, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, he's good with other pets. He came from a hoarder's home of 100 cats. And so we do something similar with all the dice. So it's like, this is Chad. Chad is a winner-take-all type die. He will do good in a home that loves backyard wrestling. And so somebody makes a donation, and we suggest about $20 because there's time and stuff, and we do need to get funding. So we have to do all the things that a standard business does, like, okay, how much do those stickers cost us? Because I can't take a $5 donation for a sticker if the stickers cost me $5, because I'm negative funds at that point. So I actually had somebody complain, like, oh, you're taking donations for these? It's like, oh, this is kind of expensive. It's like, do you kind of understand what we're trying to do here? It was just like, I grew up in a comic book and game store as a kid. So we got people all the time like, what are you charging so much? Well, sir, that's the cover price of the comic. So Marvel said that's what we should charge. So I'm going to charge you that much. I always love that one. Like, can I get this cheaper? No. Well, it's last month's issue. Okay. So it's now a back issue. Let me go grade it and price it, and it'll be more expensive.
How about in terms of running the business then? What's something that surprised you as a challenge?
I mean, just the craziest thing for me was I struggled early on letting anybody help me, because it was this weird thing that I started. So 2017, 2018, literally everywhere I was going, I was doing everything by myself. PAX 2018, 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks prior to the show, Wizards of the Coast and Paizo both pulled out. So I was now the only role-playing game thing at PAX West 2018. And I had a room with like 10 tables and all the stuff. And then I just said, I'll run a couple games. And then everybody, I ended up that entire weekend being the crazy scheduler. Like somebody's like, oh, hey, I want to run 3rd edition Gamma World at 2:00 tomorrow. I was like, sir, I don't have the 3rd edition Gamma World. I do. I'll bring all the stuff. So, hand jamming these sign-up sheets and taping them to the wall outside the room we were at in the Olive 8. And so we were in a hotel away from the main show. And we ended up hosting well over 100 games that weekend. And almost all of that, I think I ran 2 games and all the rest were attendees. It was just mind-boggling, the reception we had from individuals. And after that, the showrunners with PAX, so a lot of the people within the organization, they've been really awesome to us. And they were like, you really pulled us out of the fire on that one, because they didn't know what they were going to do, because they'd advertised there was going to be role-playing games. And well, we did role-playing games. At one point we had like 20 games going and none of them were the same game, which is just super cool, because you're like, oh, there's D&D 5th edition, 3rd edition, 1st edition. there's Star Wars, there's Deadland, you're just looking around and you're like, nothing is the same. And you're like, that was so fun to see. And because we only had 10 tables, there were people like literally sitting on benches out in the hallway, like 4 players sitting on one end and a GM sitting on the other end and playing it. And then it's like talking down the row of players. And, that was super fun to see. And you're just like, and how dedicated, we as gamers can be.
What do you see coming up for the library?
So where we're headed is, so we've grown so much, and because of that, we can't get to all the shows on the East Coast. Because like the last time we did Gen Con, it cost us just to get me and the books out there was about $5,000. And so that $5,000, yes, Gen Con is awesome to get to, but that limits, we can't get more books. That's several months, between all the things we do, that is several months of acquiring books, paying for the climate controlled storage, because, the books don't go into, the standard public storage that's outdoors and everything gets moldy and wet. It goes into an indoor climate controlled storage. We've completely filled 2 10 by 10 storage units. Like I have to move stuff out of the way and roll shelves out to curate a new thing. So we've been looking at all the events that we want to do. And for the last few years, like, how do we do those? So my wife and I are literally going to move from Seattle to the Indianapolis area in the next couple of years and start fresh-ish there, because everything is still going to go here. I have a great crew of people that are up here. I trust them. And because of that, I know that I can take the core of what we're doing here and start going in from Indianapolis. We can get to Gen Con because it's right there. We can get to all the events in the Chicago area because it's a 3-4 hour drive. We can get to PAX Unplugged up in Philly. That's a 10-ish hour drive. We just had 3 people inviting us to events in upstate New York, Massachusetts, and it's like all these people, and not knowing that we're trying to do this, expand, and they're like, how do we get you out there? I was like, you guys got to pay for the ship the books. And they're like, we might be able to swing that. And I was like, okay, and a hotel room and food. It's like how far can I push this? But so our midterm goal now is getting my wife and I moved out to the Midwest so that we can set up that next hub so that we can expand to all the shows in the rest of the U.S. Because, man, we get asked all the time, like, can you come out to different shows? It's like, no, we want to.
What are things you think the tabletop industry in particular could do better to support nonprofits in this space?
So we're not we're the only thing that does what we do, but there are other nonprofits. There's a lot of like mental health nonprofits that need just a few bucks and games and dice and stuff so that they can keep their outreach to like veterans and the groups that they're servicing. They can try to help set up in cities like youth gaming groups, because getting to kids, especially teens that are they're starting to get in a little trouble, and if you can sit them down and at a role-playing game table, we get to teach you teamwork, social skills, communication, all the things that we're kind of bad at teaching kids nowadays. We can do that through role-playing games. And if we can get companies involved, doing that in their local areas, or reaching out, hey, we got a game designer that grew up in, Scranton, and, there's no game company there. So it's like, hey, you know what? I grew up in Scranton. Let's find like a teen center or a local store and partner with them so they can set up these gaming nights for teens. Those are great ways to reach out to, some like small local nonprofits, work with nonprofits that are trying to work with individuals in prison and people that are released from prison now on parole. And because like here in Washington State, up until our current Secretary of State came in, role-playing games were banned in prisons here. And Secretary of State came in, and he's somebody, I know through gaming. He's a big nerd. And I said, was trying to figure out how to get into prisons here in Washington State. And he's like, why can't you? And I was like, everyone I've talked to is kind of no. And then he, like, his second week in the position as Secretary of State, he was like, okay, why can't we do role-playing games in prisons? Oh, it was just a standing order from a way previous Secretary of State from the 80s, just said role-playing games are banned from prisons in Washington State. He was like, done. That ban's gone. Like, he's like, I control the prisons and stuff in the state, so I can rescind that, that standing order from 40 years ago. And so we, like, here in Washington State, we have people that are getting role-playing games into prisons, but once they get out, a lot of people, while they're on parole, there's restrictions. Like, you can't be around, certain people that, especially who've done stupid stuff with. But a lot of people on parole, they have a drinking restriction. And a lot of the game stores you go to nowadays, they sell beer. So you have somebody who's gotten away from, like, hey, trying to rehabilitate in prison. I'm playing role-playing games. Now that I'm out, I can't go to the local game store and play because they sell alcohol. I don't want the stores to stop selling alcohol, because that's actually great for, adult late time gaming, and it's really good for the stores. But there are nonprofits that we can, game companies can reach out to, say, hey, is there a way we can do parolee gaming? It's like, hey, come here. It's a nice, quiet place. There's gonna be no alcohol, no drugs. It's a nice, controlled place, and you have that, that continuing care. Game companies should be reaching out with addiction centers, because best way to fight addiction is finding a replacement, and role-playing games are great. I have worked with a couple addiction centers and taught some of their individuals how to play role-playing games, and they show that and play with the people, not as a therapy thing, but as like, hey, have you thought about playing these? And then when they get done with their treatment, they're now like, oh, I got an itch. And then they write up a bunch of NPCs or write a new scenario. And then, oh, next Tuesday I got a game with my friends. And it's like, and then, after that game, if they're having runs, like, okay, next Tuesday I have a game. So they have that thing to look forward to every week. They have all the little things that we can do with role-playing games, scratch those itches. So those are a lot of little things. And I encourage game stores to do that as well. So if you're a local game store, you can reach out to, find the addiction centers in your area, and, give them some copies of role-playing games, and, find a way for them to help grow your community and give them a new avenue to be a productive member of society. It's amazing what we can do with these fun, silly, storytelling games with rules. It's just collaborative storytelling with rules.
Well, to someone listening who's got an idea for some sort of nonprofit in the tabletop space, what advice would you give them?
Have a passion. I know a bunch of people that have done like political type nonprofits, and they've literally started them because they know they can make money off of them. If you're going to do something in this space as a nonprofit, you're probably not going to make money, and you have to want to do what you're going to do. So it's have that passion, and make sure, you accept the help from others, because if I wouldn't have accepted help from others, this would have been gone a long time ago. I probably would have burnt out. I deployed to Iraq and Syria in 2019 and 2020, and for the library to keep going through that 2019 and early 2020, I had to have other people help out. So my wife stepped up and took over a bunch of stuff, and then there was other individuals. I was doing interviews with game designers from various locations in Iraq. And then in 2021, I was in Ukraine. So I'm in the middle of nowhere, Ukraine, in the dark on my phone, doing an interview, a live interview. And it's like, okay, I can do this at like 2:00 in the morning Ukrainian time, so that we can live stream it at a reasonable time in the U.S. So, and all of that was possible because I had that passion, and I was able to accept the help from other people that had offered it. I didn't know how to accept it. Let someone else help you, especially if they share a bit of that passion with you. You'll burn out if you don't, and whatever you're doing, you're not going to make money off of it. You're not going to do it for very long. And whatever you've started may have been the most awesome thing in your area, and then it's gone. And, somebody's like, well, that didn't succeed, so I won't do it either.
Any last thoughts for us?
Always support your local game store. Sometimes you may have a bad game store, support them until you get a better one. But we've always joked that you can't play, you can't play Magic at Walmart. And then it was, you can't play D&D, in Amazon, but there's online tools, use them as tools, but man, it's just so much better when you game in person, support your local store. You may be able to find D&D for cheaper on Amazon. Go ahead and pay a little more, buy it at your store. If you see a cool game, go to your store like, hey, are you able to order this? It'll take a little longer, but you know what? You're going to go there and you can put up a message like looking for people to play this obscure role-playing game I just acquired, and you'll make new friends. You'll meet new people. You'll grow your community. And, the local game store is a wonderful place to do it. And we've, again, it's just an extension of sitting around the fire telling stories. So please, I'm always adamant about support your local game store. In fact, early on, Amazon was still doing the little charity thing. So we had a link that if you bought stuff off Amazon, we get 2 cents off your purchase, whatever. I actually stopped that because I was like, and I don't know if the video is still up, but I was like, hey, we're not going to do the Amazon nonprofit thing because I feel that it's, hypocritical that I tell you, go to your local game store. But, also, hey, I'll take pennies from Amazon. And it's like, people are like, oh, well, we're buying other stuff. It's like, it's just not, I want you to go. I mean, even outside of supporting your local game store, shop locally. Go to that mom and pop hardware store over, Home Depot, or buying, on Amazon or whatever. Everything is better when you support your local individuals, and your local game store. It's where the vast majority of people in gaming have got their start.
Awesome, Dave. Thanks for your time.
Oh, no worries. Thank you very much.